actually had to put the rear jack stands offset by one adjustment on the jack stands to be able to make it be resting on all four corners. Beforehand, it was resting on the rear two and then the driver's front. This is a 10 millimeter. This is a 13 millimeter. There are two bolts which hold the battery box in place. They're both 10 millimeters. There's one more sneaky 10 millimeter hanging down here. On this APR Carbonio intake, you can use either a flathead or a little 8 millimeter. So we're going to use the 8 millimeter. That's going to be so much fun to put back in later. Just in case, I'm going to mark the outside here with a little dab of paint pen so we know that this is on the outside. I don't think it actually matters, but hey, it doesn't hurt. Next is removing the shifter cable mounting bracket, and it's a 13 millimeter here. And 3 is hiding way back here. So now, I should just be able to, you have to slide it underneath this line here that leads to the slave cylinder. Slide it under and then over. And now this can go way over here. Just get it out of the way. Next, I'll remove this support bracket here. There's a bolt here and a bolt here. They're both 13 millimeters. Only one side is threaded, and the threaded side is the side that goes on the passenger side, and the unthreaded side goes on the driver's side. Now to remove the clutch slave cylinder, there's a 13 millimeter bolt here and a 13 millimeter bolt here. May need to use a couple different sizes of sockets so that everything fits nicely. Now we're just going to tie the slave cylinder and shift cables and mounting bracket. We're going to just put all this to the side here. Just going to tie it to the master cylinder here. Alright, next step is removing, there's a wire that is the reverse light switch, which is here. Remove this electrical connector, and then removing this wire here from the starter, this connector. The other thing is to remove this ground, which is connected to this bolt right here, connected to the engine. We've removed this reverse light connector here similarly, and then there's actually one more connector right here that needs to be removed as well. So once you remove that black sheath, this piece right here, you'll see that the wire is connected here, and so we'll have to loosen this bolt to remove it. Actually, looking at it, it looks like you have to actually remove it completely. And this bolt here is also a 13mm. Alright, so next is to remove the grounding cable from the engine here, and that's also a 13mm bolt, or nut I should say. So right where we just removed the grounding cable, it actually doubles as the upper mounting point for the starter. So we'll go ahead and remove that as well, and that is a 18mm. That is a long bolt. Crazy air tools. Alright, so now there are two triple square bolts. One here and one here. And these are both 14mm triple square bolts. And these here are holding the transmission to the engine. And it's important to note that the bolt we just removed here, that's holding the starter in place, is also holding the transmission to the engine. So there's 3 bolts holding the transmission to the engine. We've removed one of them. So now may be a good time to add the engine support beam before removing those other 2. Alright, got X equals 2 double barrel stopper knots, making us have a nice solid loop. Let's just disconnect this to be on the safe side. And we're also maybe going to disconnect this hose here, just to also prevent that from getting damaged potentially. So disconnect it there, and we'll unsnap it here. And we'll just scoop this over here. And now we have plenty of room for activities. Alrighty, so we don't want to damage this, so we're going to remove a few more cables, unfortunately. Use the 10mm to get this, I believe it's a ground cable of some sort, off. Put the nut right back on there so we don't lose it. And then next up is going to be the gray plug right here. So again, push forwards, lock it, and off it comes. And now we can take off the green one. Push it, rock it, and off it pops. Black one here, which has, I'll note, green and red wires leading into it. Pull the clip back, push forwards, squeeze, and there it is. And now I believe there's a retainer of some sort right here. That'll be fun to put back in. So now everything is nice and tucked out of the way and won't get hurt, which is good. So previously, the strut was up through here, but with this here, there still wasn't enough clearance for these handles. So we put this towel here and put it into this hole, slot, whatever you want to call it. Without the towel, it goes inside and is kind of difficult to retrieve. So just going to put it here and then tension this and then put it back so that we can shut the garage door. Both mounting points are under tension, but this one is slightly more under tension since we'll be removing the engine mounting bolts from this side, but those will still be intact. So that's more just really a redundancy. Now it's time to remove the two remaining upper engine support bolts. They are the 14mm triple square bolt. There's one here, and then one that you can't quite see on camera, probably right here. For sure, you definitely want your engine to be supported at this point. Yeah, not a chance. Alright, so we finally did the trick. Was a breaker bar. It's pretty long. And like that. So I don't want to accidentally break this black piece when I'm trying to get that other engine mount bolt free. So we're gonna, I believe, take this clip off this way. And we should be able to slide this right out. Beautiful. And, do we strip it or is it free? It is free. So, before we take out those remaining two bolts, we're going to put a transmission jack underneath the transmission. So those are loose but not removed. So I'm going to be replacing the output shaft seals. Because of that, I'm going to go ahead and drain the transmission fluid, and on this particular transmission you can't just use the fill and drain plugs, because the fill plug, the actual correct capacity for this transmission is above the line of the fill plug. The fill plug was used when the transmission was not in the vehicle during initial assembly, but with it oriented this way, you actually need to fill it through the reverse light switch right here. And also, merely opening the drain plug will not fully drain the transmission either. You need to remove, there's a pin on the bottom that you need to remove. And so, in order to prevent a piece from going out of alignment, you need to lock the shifter assembly. So we do this by, there's a lever here, and you need to pull up on this lever, trying to turn it, while at the same time pushing gently in towards the body of the shift assembly, and then at the same time you're going to push down on this top piece of the shift here. So as you can see, now it doesn't move anywhere. And when that lever is in the correct position, it will be pointing straight up. Next, we're going to drain the transmission fluid. And like I said, we'll need to drain it from two places. We'll drain it from the drain plug here, and that there is a 17mm Allen head. And then we'll also drain it from here. There's two bolts near this Volkswagen logo here. We're going to remove the one that's closer to the driver's side of the car, and that there is a T45 Torx head You'll pull this bolt out, and then this black piece will also come down, and a bunch more fluid will come from there. Oh, fantastic. Once everything's drained, we can go ahead and reinstall those bolts. The drain plug is torqued to 35 Newton meters, or about 26 foot-pounds. Oh, that's nice. Well, that's a big hunk of metal. This one here doesn't have a torque spec. We use a shorter ratchet wrench and get it pretty tight with a shorter ratchet wrench. Around there. Next, we're going to remove these axle flange bolts here, as well as there is a, you can't really see it, but there is a heat shield in place that has a bolt holding it on here, a bolt holding it on here, and it is a 16 millimeter for the heat shield and a 8 millimeter triple square XZN for the axle. Tricky because the axle wants to move on me. I'll hold it in place. I think to do the trick. I don't believe there are any alignment issues here, but just to be safe, I'm going to put a line. Neato! Now we can go ahead and zip tie it to, let's zip tie it to the exhaust manifold, why not? Beautiful. Oh, and that's free. So I ended up zip tying it, the axle shaft to the clutch master cylinder, and then also, in addition, I tied a string here to the shaft itself. Next we'll remove this bracket that holds the starter and some wiring in place. And this is a 13 millimeter bolt, nut, sorry. And this bracket can now move out of the way. And now we'll go ahead and finish removing the starter. And this here is a 18 millimeter socket, right here. Next we'll remove this transmission mount here. There's a 21 millimeter hex here, and then two 16 millimeters here. Oh, what the heck? Why? Why? Oh. There's not supposed to be oil there. Ugh. That's nice. So the one closer to the rear of the vehicle is a longer bolt. The one closer to the front is a shorter bolt, and they both have washers on them. And this should just slide out like that. There's a 16mm bolt that is right near the passenger side CV axle flange area, and this here holds the transmission to the engine. We will remove this one. So I'll brace up against the oil pan here so that I don't flex the mounts too hard. We're going to go ahead and mark the bolt that we just removed with a number 1 on the head. Alright, next we're going to remove these 2 bolts holding the transmission to the engine. There's a third one here, but we're going to remove just these 2 for now and then try to put the transmission jack in place. Next we'll remove the 16mm hex bolt that connects the engine to the transmission. I'll use this breaker bar again. The shorter one. We'll mark this with number 4. Next we'll remove these 2 upper mounting bracket bolts, and these are both 18mm. There's one. There's 2. We'll remove the front one first, and we'll put a number 5 on it, and then we'll remove the rear one and put a 6 on it. Now with the transmission supported, we can remove the 2 remaining 14mm triple square bolts that are connecting the transmission to the engine. Here's the front one, and they are in fact identical. I believe there are now only 3 remaining bolts which need to be removed. There are, I believe, 3 bolts that hold the transmission to the upper mount that we took the 2 bolts from just now. And so I believe we need to now lower the transmission a bit and then take those 3 bolts out. That was fun. Let's tighten this strap up maybe a notch. That is not bueno. Alright, I'm going to try to get these 3 bolts off. I think we can only reach one right now, but these are 16mm bolts that we're removing. We'll mark this with a number 7. So we lowered the transmission a little bit more, and I think this one can fit. So I'm pulling gently down on the transmission, and there's number 8. Now we're removing the output shaft flanges to make more room, and also because we're changing the output shaft seals anyways. There's a 6mm bolt on the inside here, and what makes it a lot easier, since this can spin freely, is putting back in one of the bolts and then putting something between the bolt so that when you turn the socket here, it's already loose, the bolt will hit the thing and prevent it from turning. And you should have already drained your transmission fluid at this point, otherwise it may come out at this point. Now do the same process on this side. There's our hex. That's probably not good, huh? Neat. Shit.
What is it stuck on? You know?
The subframe!
Huh?
The subframe! And it's down! Yeah!